Now that the 2022 regular season has come to a close, the biggest question around the Kentucky football program is who is going to replace Will Levis at quarterback. Levis is the most talented and most dynamic signal caller to come through Lexington in a very long time, and he's currently slated to be a first-round selection in the upcoming NFL draft. Replacing a guy of that caliber at the most important position on the field is not going to be an easy task for this UK coaching staff. I think that Kentucky will be an attractive destination for high-level QBs due to the insanely talented wide receiver core that we have, as well as the fact that we developed Will Levis from a backup at Penn State to a first-round NFL pick. Those two things alone will attract QBs to Lexington. For me, there's 5 realistic options that I want to go over in terms of who could replace Levis at QB next season. Let's get into it. Tyler Van Dyke out of Miami was regarded as a surefire first-round draft pick before this season. He's my personal pick for who I want the most at QB for the Wildcats next year. In his first year as a starter at Miami in 2021, Van Dyke threw for almost 3,000 yards to go along with 25 touchdowns and only 6 interceptions. Van Dyke possesses an absolute cannon for an arm. He has great pocket presence and awareness. He doesn't seem to make many mistakes and takes care of the football. This year at Miami, the Hurricanes were simply a mess. Van Dyke battled injuries all season and his on-field play took a major dip. Miami ended the season with a 5-7 record and they missed a bowl game as well. With all these factors in play, it seems possible that Van Dyke could choose to enter the transfer portal and take his talents elsewhere for a fresh start. Van Dyke is also from Connecticut, which just so happens to be where Will Levis is from. Levis and Van Dyke grew up together and attended camps together, so it's fair to assume that the two are friends. Maybe this connection will lead Van Dyke to Lexington next season. Maybe he sees the success that his buddy Will Levis had at UK, and he wants to come here to boost himself back up to being a first-round selection in the NFL. With Van Dyke's cannon for an arm, it could be interesting to see him throwing deep balls to a sophomore Barryon Brown. DJ Ugalele is a controversial figure. He was solid for Clemson last season, and statistically he was even better this year. Despite this, the former 5-star quarterback has been booed by his own fans, and he got benched a couple times in favor of freshman QB Cade McNamara. With the disappointing end to Clemson's regular season, it's perfectly reasonable to expect the Tigers to move forward with McNamara as their starter, which could lead Ugalele to potentially enter the transfer portal. DJ was another guy who was considered a potential first-rounder coming into the season, but that draft stock has fallen off. It seems like his best option would be to start somewhere new. When you look at the stats, DJ didn't even have a bad season. The 6'4", big-bodied signal caller threw for 2,500 yards along with 22 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. Alongside that, he also tallied almost 600 rushing yards and 7 rushing touchdowns. In terms of style, DJ is probably the closest we're going to get to replicating Will Levis. As a big, strong, dual-threat QB with a strong arm, the two are pretty similar. DJ may not have been good enough for Clemson's championship standards, but I think he could be a perfectly good replacement for Will Levis. Next we have Michigan quarterback Cade McNamara. McNamara was the hero of Ann Arbor last season, helping Michigan defeat Ohio State. He had a pretty solid year as their starter last year. This year, however, Jim Harbaugh felt like JJ McCarthy was the better option at QB, and so Cade got benched. There was some drama on social media after he got benched, so it's safe to assume he's going to want to finish his career elsewhere. Cade is a little bit undersized at 6'1", but he threw for 2,500 yards, 15 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions as the starter last year. With only 1 season of starting experience under his belt, it could be iffy bringing him in to replace Levis, but it's certainly an option. Hank Buckmeyer from Boise State is the only guy on this list who is currently in the transfer portal. There have been whispers about him being Kentucky-bound for a while. He has connections with current offensive coordinator Rich Scangarello, but no one even knows if Skang is going to be on the staff next year after a below-average season as the play caller. Buckmeyer is an extremely experienced quarterback. He was a 3-year starter at Boise State and had his best year last season when he threw for 3,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. He's thrown for over 6,500 yards in his career, and the dude is simply tough as nails. I think that Buckmeyer exemplifies the Mark Stoops mindset and culture, and I think he would fit in here. Nothing jumps off the page about him in terms of skill set, but he's just a tough, solid, experienced pocket passer. I think he'd be able to take the reins of the offense, especially with the skill players we would have around him. Georgia quarterback Brock Vandegrift is more of a shot in the dark in comparison to the other 4 guys on this list. He has 0 in-game college experience. He was listed as the 3rd-string quarterback in Athens this season behind Stetson Bennett and Carson Beck. Vandegrift was an 18-year-old true freshman this year, but he's a former 5-star recruit. He was a top 5 quarterback in his recruiting class and a top 20 overall player. He stands at 6'3", and despite primarily being a pocket passer, he can do damage with his legs as well. Vandegrift was an absolute superstar playing high school football in the state of Georgia. For the Georgia Bulldogs, they're also going to have to replace production at quarterback. Stetson Bennett just finished his 67th year of college football and will finally be out of eligibility. Their backup is redshirt freshman Carson Beck, another former 5-star, who most expect to be the guy at quarterback for them next year. It's also possible that the Dogs grab a top-tier transfer in the portal as well, if they want more reassurance at the position. Due to this, I find it entirely possible that Brock Van de Griff enters the transfer portal. With Carson Beck being so young, it looks like he'll be the guy in Athens moving forward. If Van de Griff wants to play, transferring is probably his best bet. Bringing in a young former 5-star recruit alongside Kentucky's young elite skill players on the offense could make for a fun couple of years in Lexington. I think it would be worth a shot. There are other players who would definitely be an option as well. I've heard rumors about NC State quarterback Devin Leary, as well as Miami of Ohio quarterback Brett Gabbert, and a couple other names have been floating around as well. This list was just my personal 5 that I would want to see in Lexington next year. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Are there any names you'd be interested in landing? Do you believe in the guys we already have on the roster? Let's discuss it.